Greetings and welcome to the You Are the Miracle podcast. I am Cheyenne Kramer. This is my better half.
Donald Kramer. Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great day like we are.
I know. He's been bugging everybody he can bug this morning about the beautiful weather we've got here in Florida right now. So I hope that wherever you are, you're enjoying it. So today we are excited to be able to bring a guest onto the show.
A special guest at that.
A special guest at that. Absolutely. You know that we are all about getting more people off the bleachers and onto the playing field to start making a difference. There's so many people say, yeah, I wish we could have heaven on earth. Well, stop wishing and start doing. That's our whole point. My hashtag is do the change. That is what I love to put out there because it's all about understanding that we all are on this planet with special gifts and talents that we could be sharing with others. And we just got to get off the bleachers and go do something with it. So today we're excited to have Dr. Keith McNally with us. And this is a guy who's got a story and he's decided to use it as a basis for his life work. And thanks so much for being with us today, Keith.
Shay and Don, thank you so much for this conversation. And so I'm usually on the other side of the microphone. Let's see how this works out.
Absolutely, yes. If you haven't found him on YouTube or anywhere else yet, you can find Dr. Keith. He's called The Question Guy. It's the Question Guy podcast. Right. And he has, created some amazing conversations with people from all over the world. And so, yes, today it's his turn to be in the hot seat. So can you please tell people a little bit about some of your history that has kind of become the foundation for what you're starting to call your life mission?
Well, I do appreciate that. And so that could go way back, but we're going to go back 10 years. And so the standard story at this point is 2 suicide attempts. And so in 2013 and again in 2021, both for different reasons, that I've made the attempt to take my own life. And so from that, the journey back into what I call the journey back into living, is a difficult path to go towards. Because when you struggle in darkness and when you struggle with, even contemplating, do I want to live today? Do I not want to live today? That is not a good place to be. And so I've been there twice, and stepping into well, let me go back and say, when you would take the attempt, you make the attempt, other than if, strategically, if you're going to put a gun and the trigger goes off and the bullet goes through your brain, you've made the decision. That's how it ends. For others who'd either take pills or, through any other means that are not as direct harmful. And if it doesn't work, maybe there's a reason why it didn't work. And so I always say, maybe I was too scared. Maybe I was too scared to take my own life. And that's a reality that I have to live with. But either way, when somebody faces that decision, sometimes it's not about wanting to die, it's not wanting to live. And so there were times in my life I didn't want to live. But when you failed the attempt, there's a lot of energy, effort, strategy that kind of goes into all that. But now you're left stuck with shit. I mean, sorry, but I'm here and I've got to do something with the here and now. And so putting forth the new energy to kind of move forward is a different way of looking at life, because you now have to re-engage. You have to figure out what to do that day. How are you going to survive through the emotional trauma? And so that's kind of where I am. That's kind of my backstory.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's interesting because when I'm teaching my Find Your Song or Live Your Song class, one of the questions that I always ask people to consider is, what challenge, what trauma, what difficulty have you come through where you have gained some kind of knowledge, some kind of wisdom, some kind of different perspective that you need to be sharing with other people? And my guess is that you're kind of in that space right now. I mean, what kind of wisdom do you feel you've gained from your experience that is now important for you to move forward and help other people pay it forward, basically?
Uh, I at this point, after the second attempt, again in 2021, and it wasn't even, COVID didn't cause, well, actually it kind of did because I had lost my job. And so I had lost a job, but I was unemployed for 12 months. And that is that's a hole nobody should be in. Never, ever, ever, because especially for a guy, and I'm 54 at this point, so we're talking a couple, just turned 50, 51. And so midlife, needing to acquire security, and I could have literally lost everything, house, and be living on the street or wherever that would be. So you struggle with your own value, your importance, your purpose, and all those things that kind of play into your thinking. And it's like, I need to start connecting with people because my personal and professional connections were rather limited. And to give your audience some backstory, I'm a college professor by trade, and so you call me doctor. I don't know if it's on my my Zoom call, but usually it's Dr. Keith McNally, and Doctor of Education, taught IT for 15, 16 years, and and you got some people in your in your immediate audience, and that's cool too.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
So with all that, I just say I started reaching out to people on my LinkedIn. Those are the only people I kind of knew, air quotes, because those are the people who made at least the effort to connect with me. We're connected on social media. Didn't really have much of a Facebook page, and really didn't have a something strong on YouTube, but LinkedIn was the place. And so I had some friends, I had some people that I knew, some colleagues that I knew, but it was really then about, for whatever reason, and then this again, COVID and quarantine had us all isolated. So we were kind of all in the same space, except that my space was a bit unique to me, just struggling all kind of different ways. And I just started tapping on virtual doors and say, hey, do you want to have a conversation? And that's kind of how it started. So my words of wisdom is that's going to be the hardest step forward, but it's going to be the most required or most needed step forward, is to start having connections and making conversations happen.
Wow. Well, and that sounds like wisdom to me, because a lot of people that I've known in the past, and I've lost several friends to suicide, just not feeling connected to other people was a big thing. So, isn't that awesome that you kind of realized that you had the power to do something to start creating those new connections so that you could feel more connected? So, I'm
Well,
glad that your attempts were failed.
well, yeah, it's odd that you say that that I knew to do something. I actually didn't know to do something. It was more I actually I my statement is, I think my body, my subconscious, something, because that was not my thing. I'm kind of a loner. I'm kind of a misfit, by happenstance, maybe. Some people say it's in my numbers, but I don't know about that. But either way, it was like something that was kind of pushing me to get out of my comfort zone. And so that's what I did.
Well, and that's required for most of us. When we talk about trying to get people off the bleachers, sitting in the bleachers is pretty comfortable for most people these days. They like to be a spectator. They like to live vicariously through somebody else. I mean, the whole sports industry is built on
True.
that. It's sad but true. So, again, I applaud you for getting out of your comfort zone, even if you didn't consciously know that's what you needed to do. Somewhere, something inside you knew that that was something you really needed. And again, I'm glad. I've loved listening to a lot of your podcasts. I think you've had some great people and some great stories. So it is
You
awesome.
both of you included.
Well, thank you. But so talk to us a little bit about, where you are now, other than, you do have the Question Guy podcast that has, I am sure, been part of a healing journey for you. But you're looking to step it up in big ways now. You've got a whole other speaker series you're doing, and you've got some big things on the agenda for the next year or two, I believe.
Yeah,
So I
let's
know
hear
you're
about
hinting
that.
at I know you're hinting at something. So let's kind of give your audience some backstory, some present day backstory. And so um, needing to connect put me into a situation where I was having conversations with people, like you said, all over the world. And I know you said that earlier. And so what initially was basically conversations turned into what I called level up, basically because people were taking this time in basically human history, post-COVID, to make changes, very clear, specific, intentional changes in their life. And they wanted that, they needed it. And I started asking people, hey, can we just record this conversation? I know you've got a great story. And again, I'm not even looking for intentionally creating a podcast. I don't know if that's what people call them. I really was inspired by their story. Um, about 15, 20, shows in, so recorded sessions in. Um, I was just kind of, this was kind of becoming a cool thing to do, right? It was just very basic, very nice. But I kind of figured I rebranded the Question Guy, college professor, the Question Guy podcast kind of makes sense. So again, we're going, back 2 years since that time. So since the very early beginnings, and you were in season one, uh, we've had 160 recorded conversations on the Question Guy podcast. 160 in what, 2.5 years, and so that's a lot. So give it some focus. I was having a conversation with just about anybody who had a story, but evolving that series, the stories are now very specific to your trial to triumph type of story. So those people who have made real specific pivots, overcome a lot of different hurdles, and we want to tell that personal story. And so far to date, two people have cried on my show.
Oh,
And
wow.
it wasn't intentional. They came in with a really personal story that brought them, just talking about their story, brought them to tears. Uh, that has evolved. Many people have used their personal pivots and created business models from them. And so they became coaches or speakers or whatever. And so I evolved into something called Coach's Corner, with me being the coach. You don't necessarily have to be a coach in that space. But I now talk to people who are, for 15 minutes. These are real, intentional conversations, Coach's Corner, to talk about what they do professionally, because people are now using that space, that newfound wisdom, to help others who were struggling in that same space that they were in. And so most of the stories are around that. I've had some other people come on, small business owners or whatnot, but it's really about those people who are making, impacting those people who are hurting in the same way that they did. But then you talked about the Envision Speaker Series. And so the Envision Speaker Series was the next evolution, because I believe there are people such as yourselves who are out there in the world who are impacting their local community. And my original intention was to find those people and have conversations with them, because they've got to be doing something successful, because they are making a real impact, not just on their clients, but at a community, at a scale. Right. And so there's got to be something cool going on there, because I kind of want to be part of that. I want to be part of that change. Not quite sure how that's going to be. Maybe my space is as a business model to make the Envision Speaker Series really a business, to find and to have those conversations, to
Mhm.
empower those people locally, and scale at global scale. That's kind of where we're at. Um, had Last night was my 17th recorded episode of the Envision Speaker Series. So I'm not doing seasons, but that's just going to go on and on and on, as long as I'm alive. And Coach's Corner is now in season 2, so I've had like 75 uh, you know, business conversations. And so things are going good in that way. Uh, it's the conversation that empowers. I think it's the conversation that it makes the impact. And so just like this,
Mhm.
people are out there who but it's not for me. So the evolution of the Envision Speaker Series is not just to talk about something. It's actually to drive the conversation so that we're solving problems. And you're coming back in January for a very specific event, the start of several different very specific events for the Envision Speaker Series, because I just don't want to have conversations anymore. I want people such as yourselves to step up to the plate, like you're telling others, and say, this is the problem that we see. This is our proposed solution. I've seen it happen. I've seen it work. I've made it work. And now you're sharing that with others who want to be able to do. So I'm gonna be learning from the two of you, how to do that. Um, Part of that is to tell my story, to tell my survivor story of two suicide attempts and one heart attack. So as long as I don't have another heart attack and I stay breathing, we're in good shape. Does your audience want to know what I want to do?
Well, we definitely want you to tell our audience about some of these things that you're planning on doing. I know you're planning on a pretty big hike. Where did the idea for that come from?
I think my subconscious is my crazy subconscious. I tell you, because I wrote a book. I wrote a book called "Walking the Path: A Leader's Journey," which, by its premise, was a young man and his friends. He was able to convince his friends, and so he lived in a community, kind of stuck, kind of, enclosed, and nobody ever talked about going over the mountains. But he did. He needed to find out what life was like because he felt dead inside. And so I don't always use that word because sometimes people are scared of that word. But when you're stuck in a situation, so metaphorically speaking, suicide, when you're stuck in a situation, don't know how to get out of it. John felt stuck in his life. And so he was expected to take over his dad's farm. That wasn't his thing. Long story short, in order to find out what was over the mountain, he had to climb it. He had to scale it. So guess what I'm going to do? My
He's gonna do it for real.
I'm going to do it for real. And so the inspiration came, earlier this year. So as the time of this recording, it's December 2023. So earlier in 2023, I said, hey, to myself, let's hike. So it's called a through hike, but my goal was to hike across the Appalachian Trail. I live here in Virginia, and the Appalachian Trail stretches from Georgia all the way to Maine, 14 states, 2,200 miles roughly. So I had this crazy idea of actually doing it. Initially on my own. I'm probably going to do most of it on my own, depending.
Wow.
So anyway, that's the metamorphosis from being stuck here in this seat to actually saying, hey, if this old body who survived two suicides and a heart attack can hike over this 2,200 miles, any of you out there, you could do something important too.
Absolutely. You become the shining example of being off the bleachers. I think you qualify now for for getting onto the playing field.
Yeah, definitely.
I appreciate that.
Oh my goodness. So tell people, I know part of your fundraising for this huge hike, part of your strategy, you've started talking about doing events. You want to share something about what's in the works there?
So some foundational stuff is, of course, book sales would be cool. Sponsorships, looking for that. So, but I'm really using, like I said, the Envision Speaker Series is now my baby. Now I'm going to do, always do the question guide because people have their personal stories that they want to tell, and quite frankly, that's not even close to stopping. I'm already, approaching season 5, and so for those who are watching and listening, I do 40 episodes a season, so I was told that was kind of insane, to have so many in one block. But I'm already close to going into season 5, and so there are still people out there who want to talk to me of all things. And these are new people. These are people who are being referred. Hey, you really need to have a conversation with Dr. K. He's really cool, at how he has conversations, and so that's still going. I have almost halfway through season 2, Coach's Corner. But I want to use the Envision Speaker Series as kind of the financial foundation for the hike through. And the overall goal is really to raise, of course, awareness and education, not only in suicide prevention, but also in grief, because for those who do die by suicide, they leave a wake of, of trauma to the people who are left behind. And so I do have some coaches in that grief space who are able to kind of step in and work with people. My goal is to support those two, plus a colleague of ours, Rick Mabe, who is actually doing some cool stuff here in Virginia, and another one, Kevin Strauss, who has got a great communications app, which I think is very useful in terms of making those real connections. And so without those, again, without that, that's what kind of led me to my turmoil. I think if all these pieces were in place, it would be really great to see. I think we could do a lot of really good, a lot of transformation, personal transformation in other people's lives. But these Envision Speaker Series special events, like the one you're going to be involved in January, if I could get sponsors around that and then get an audience around that, because the goal is to solve problems wherever we are, and we're going to talk about what it means to help people heal emotionally through building
Mm.
communities, and we're going to talk
Wow.
about that. So a lot of good stuff going.
It absolutely is. Absolutely is. And, we do have a lot of connections in the Raleigh area, as you know. I know you actually graduated from Eastern
Oh,
Carolina
I was about to
University, if I
say,
remember.
because yeah, because Raleigh's different. We got the Wolf Pack versus the Pirates, right? We ain't gonna do that.
Well, I still hold the vision, and I don't know if it's possible at all, but I'm going to put it out here because they say you gotta speak it before it can happen. But I still hold the vision of getting some of those North Carolina colleges and universities to come together around this whole issue of suicide prevention. Do you remember how many I told you that had 16 suicides at North Carolina State University alone this year? That is, if the colleges can't put down their competition for a few moments and come together around an issue like this and figure out how to save their students, oh, that would be very concerning. Not surprising, but concerning.
Yeah,
So, that is, and I wanted to make sure I mentioned Raleigh here because, again, we have a fair number of people in Raleigh who do take a glance at these podcasts, and I want people to hear that we would love to hear from people who like the idea of being somehow, whether it's sponsoring or assisting or volunteering or whatever, to put on a live event in Raleigh around suicide prevention. I would love to see our colleges and universities involved in it. I'd love to see one of them be a host sponsor where, we could actually use their space to be able to do this.
yeah.
So I'm just putting that call out here because I know I'm connected to a lot of Wolfpack alumni, shall we say, in LinkedIn and other places. Beware, you may be hearing from me.
Well, I think there should be something started in that space, and so if because even you give out a number 16, the statistics are telling us recently that there are two groups of people that are struggling, and one is my age, so 45 and older, and I'm 54 at the time of this recording. Um, and then there's the whole gap of 18 to 25-year-olds who kind of just feel lost,
Yes.
emotionally, socially, and technology has made a big impact in our lives, some of it negative, some of it positive. So I think if the three of us can start working together, not just one event, but a series of events, and maybe do something where we could impact the local people. I'm here in Virginia, so I'm not that far from Raleigh. Drive down or, a plane flight down, real easy stuff. We should be able to establish something more sustainable, something more long lasting, sustainable in, in the college environment, both university, college, community college.
I would agree. And I know you mentioned Kevin Strauss earlier, and I know he is a Wolfpack alumni. So, we definitely call on him with all of this. And I know he has said a lot about his desire to see a live event not be just lecture, but getting more hands-on or experiential or something that gets people more engaged. Have you guys had any kind of conversation about that yet?
We directly, no, I've not had the conversations uh, in terms of what we're talking about here. So maybe we need to do that quite soon, if not today. But just to kind of give clarity to the situation, my Envision Speaker Series, even though it's called Speaker Series, meaning I bring professionals to the virtual table, I'd like to bring them to the real table, but they're not giving a lecture. I actually sit down like we're doing now and have a conversation, but very intentional to a problem focus, what they are understanding about that problem, and their proposed solutions to the problem. And if they've done anything already to make it starting an impact, that's where that conversation is in the Envision Speaker Series. I take our audience on a journey per se. Now I use that word a lot these days because it's part of my brand. I take the audience on a journey. So we're going to start why there's a problem, why it exists, and who it's hurting. And then we take the person who I'm talking with because they've experienced it. Typically, again, it's somebody who's has a direct relation to this pain that other people are also feeling. And how did they create this space where they not only were, going through healing, but are able to make real change. And so whatever that looks like. And so, for example, I spoke with last night, which was a lady who is creating real impact in human trafficking, stopping human trafficking, which she actually calls human slavery. Because when you take somebody's rights away, you're pretty much enslaving them. And so she's creating
Absolutely.
real change in that space, starting on the West Coast, trying to move it across to the East Coast here in the States. And so I say, what, after that conversation, which was quite frankly an hour long, I'm saying, come the new year, come January, we need to start doing, some real things. We need to start putting a proposal and some other, concrete ideas together. Because she wants to set up shelters, basically. She has other things going on in terms of education and awareness and things like that. But she actually wants to literally save the people who are being abducted and kidnapped and sold into slavery. She actually said human slavery, human trafficking is more, what's the word I'm looking for? For people who are doing it, they make money selling people than they do selling drugs.
It's
So that's
true.
freaking incredible. I mean, how can that even
Yep,
possibly be?
it's true. It's sad. It shouldn't be happening, but it sure as heck is. It's very prevalent all over the place. Here in Florida is one of the big areas because, people arrive here from all over from boats and lines. And there's
Yeah.
so many ports of entry here, and there's just people who get brought here specifically for that, just like in the very long time ago days. So
Yeah.
we get it. We get it. Did you have any final questions for Mr. Keith?
I don't have any right now. I think what he's doing is fantastic and it's needed, that's for sure.
It certainly is needed, and I'm trying to see if I can find my share screen button here in the middle of all of this because um
Right.
here we go. Because one of the important things is how can people get a hold of
It's true.
him?
Oh, absolutely. So I
First,
appreciate you sharing this. This is walkingthepath.net. This is the actual site for the campaign itself, why it exists, what I'm doing with it. If you scroll all the way down, you'll see already got some section hikers who are going to be walking part of the path with me. That's my handsome face. And then the service providers at the very bottom, including Kevin, Michelle, Gulam, and those are the section hikers. And then, so it's Kevin, Michelle, Rick, and Gulam Fernandez.
oh my goodness. You've got my picture on this page. I didn't know that.
Well, you you
Surprise.
you shared a suicide story, so you have a
Yeah.
suicide story. Your friends from way back.
Yes.
So I had to share that. Rick lost his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Gulama's sister, and Mitch had, as a pastor and spiritual healer, he's actually had some impact and direct knowledge of how that impacts others.
Yep. So you've got lots of people who are coming together to work on these very large projects with you, and that's a beautiful thing. And there's an opportunity at the top of the page and another one at the bottom of the page to be able to support the campaign. And if it's not fully visible here, it is walkingthepath.net, which is also the name of your book, if I'm not mistaken.
So it is. It's walking the path, a leader's journey, and so there's a pretty picture of the mountains, walking the path, a leader's journey. So I initially called it a leader's journey rather than recovery from suicide, because that's basically it was a selling point. But metaphorically speaking, again, it's about a young man who feels caught and is dead in his life, and so the only way to find out what's on the other side of the mountain is to pick up his backpack and figure it out.
I get it. I get it. Well, we are so grateful that you took time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today on You Are the Miracle, because Keith, you are being a miracle in terms of helping other people, being vulnerable about your story, being able to be a beacon of light for to other people, that there are ways to take that darkness and shine a light on it and be able to help other people going through similar things. So I still see great things for you in the future. And if we can just keep you healthy and keep you moving forward, that's what our hopes and prayers are for you.
Definitely.
Well, like I said, as long as my heart's beating, you'll see me another day.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you again for being with us, and thank you to everybody who's been following us with You Are the Miracle. Have an awesome week, and we'll see you again next week. Take
Bye,
care.
everyone.
Bye-bye.